We have some major breaking news that has been announced that Jimmie Johnson will run the NASCAR Cup Series race at San Diego next year. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. As I just said a second ago, we got some pretty massive major breaking news that has been announced that Jimmie Johnson will run at the NASCAR Cup race in San Diego in 2026 for the number 84 car for Legacy Motor Club. Here's the announcement from Jimmie Johnson today. Going back to Cali, excited to announce I'll be participating in the inaugural NASCAR San Diego race in my home state starting next June. Continuing on, Legacy Motor Club also released their own statement earlier today, and we're going to read that. Jimmie Johnson set to return for hometown Ford NASCAR San Diego weekend. Today at Brand Week in Atlanta, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion and Legacy Motor Club owner Jimmie Johnson announced he will return to his California roots next June, as it is his intention to compete in the NASCAR Cup Series event during the inaugural NASCAR San Diego weekend. The event, slated for June 19th through 21st, 2026, marks NASCAR's first ever race at the Naval Base Coronado, bringing the top stars of one of America's most iconic coastal settings. Here's what Jimmie Johnson said about racing in this event. Growing up just miles from San Diego, I dream about racing here in a NASCAR vehicle someday, but I never thought it would be possible. I just came to a realization that there would be no way NASCAR could race in that city, as there would be nowhere to put a track. So it's just mind-blowing to me that NASCAR made this a reality. To come back home, compete in front of my community, the military, the family, and friends, and do it with Carvana and Legacy Motor Club, this is one of those full-time circle experiences I will never forget. It's a lifelong dream. Jimmie Johnson continued on by saying, when I think about everything this sport has given me and where it all started, being able to race in San Diego at this level feels like my career has come full circle. Starting out on two wheels racing motorcycles throughout the West Coast, and now being able to race on four in the same region is something that I never thought I would see. Additionally, my grandparents were military and are buried in Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery near the base, so it's an honor to race there. This is going to be very, very special. Carvana, as they've noted in the statement, Carvana will unveil the number 84 Toyota Camry XSC paint scheme that will compete in San Diego in the near future. This is a really, really big deal. Obviously, Jimmie Johnson has said, we talked about this on the channel earlier this year, and I did talk about this on the Silly Season Update as well. If you haven't checked it out, I suggest you do. But I talked about in Silly Season Update that Jimmie Johnson has been wanting to compete at the race in San Diego. This, of course, is very close to El Cajon, California, and this is one of the races that was on Jimmie Johnson's bucket list for 2026. Because there were some questions throughout the 2025 year whether 2025 would be the final season for Jimmie Johnson or not, because Jimmie Johnson just turned 50 years old. And Jimmie Johnson has accomplished a lot in this sport, but with rumors down the road of Legacy Motor Club expanding to 3 full-time cars, and we're talking about him having a third full-time car for 2026, with Jimmie making some starts, there were some questions, though, if Jimmie was going to retire at the end of this year. Well, we know it's officially confirmed that Jimmie is going to run the race at San Diego. And I got to be honest, this is a really awesome and really, really big deal for this event. This makes this event much bigger, because I think of all the big events going into 2026, I think this race on Naval Base Coronado in San Diego, I think this is one of the biggest events that NASCAR has had in quite some time. This, of course, replaces the Chicago Street Course event, which took over the race because it's technically on a street track, basically, around the Naval Base. I think this is a really, really big deal. And have the likes of Jimmie Johnson, a 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, 83 career Cup Series wins, a NASCAR Hall of Famer, competing in this event is a really, really big deal. Now, what are realistic expectations for Jimmie Johnson? I wouldn't expect Jimmie Johnson to be the most competitive in this event. We've seen Jimmie Johnson in recent years since coming back and running part-time in 2024. Jimmie Johnson only had one shining light over the course of the last couple of years, and that, of course, is scoring a top 5 finish during the Daytona 500, where he finished in 3rd position. Outside of that, it's been really big struggle for Jimmie. He's crashed in the Coca-Cola 600, got Connor Zolch, who was making his Cup debut at that time, caught up in the incident and crashed, and which Connor got a top 30, by the way, which I think is really impressive, especially for a rookie. And Jimmie Johnson really struggled in other events throughout the last couple of years. But again, to have Jimmie Johnson competing in this event is a really, really big deal. And then you have to ask yourself the other big question, will Jimmie Johnson enter more races in 2026? I would have to think Jimmie Johnson is going to run more races in 2026 than just the San Diego event. One race that I think about is the Daytona 500. Jimmie Johnson has competed the Daytona 500 many, many times, attempted to qualify for the Daytona 500 in recent years, and I would expect that Jimmie Johnson will be one of the names that could be a candidate to get back and run the Daytona 500 next year. I know Braycar mentioned the possibility of another team like RFK, but we'll get to that later. Continuing on, though, with Jimmie, I think there's some other races that Jimmie Johnson might want to check off his bucket list. I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmie Johnson does end up running the Coca-Cola 600 in 2026. And I do think there's some other big events that Jimmie Johnson is going to want to run, like the Brickyard 400, for example. I think he ran the Brickyard 400 last year, and I think Jimmie Johnson will be very competitive if he does get the opportunity to run those events. But I think this is a bucket list event for Jimmie, and he wanted to compete in this event. He showed a lot of interest, expressed interest in running this event, and to be honest, I think this is a really exciting and really big deal, not just for NASCAR, but Legacy Motor Club as well. And he's going to get the opportunity. I think a lot of younger fans are going to get the chance to see the opportunity of Jimmie Johnson being on Prime. So if I'm not mistaken, this race will be the final race on the Amazon Prime coverage in 2026. So I think this is a really big deal for someone like Jimmie Johnson, who has amazing pedigree in the sport, a legend of the sport, someone who competed in the sport for many, many years. I think this is a really awesome and really cool deal and amazing stuff to see. Another big question we have to ask ourselves is, will we see some other big names enter this race in San Diego? I think as we get closer to the event next year, I would more than likely see some major names show up. We could see some drivers, some supercar world come out. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like a Will Brown or a Brock Feeney or a Cam Waters, who have a lot of experience racing a track similar to this, I would not be surprised if they show up. I know that Sheldon Creed has expressed interest in wanting to run the race at San Diego. I think he talked about it when it was announced in June or July of this year. But he expressed a ton of interest in running this event. He wants to run not just the NASCAR Cup and Xfinity races, or the O'Reilly Auto Parts races, I should say, but Sheldon has also expressed interest in wanting to run the Craftsman Truck Series event at this track as well. And could we see some other big names that we're not thinking about, like a Scott Dixon, for example, who wanted to run the Daytona 500 at some point for an organization? Could we see some other teams show up that we're not thinking about at this point? Who knows? But I think this is still a massive deal nonetheless. And I think seeing Jimmie Johnson enter another NASCAR Cup Series race and compete in the event at San Diego, I gotta be honest, this is a really, really huge deal and a big win for the sport as well. So I'm excited to see what Jimmie Johnson can do in this event. Again, I do expect Jimmie Johnson to show some competitiveness and show some really good speed out there. We'll see if Jimmie can be a massive factor and contender. I think he will be a big contender, but who knows? Not a major contender for the win, but Jimmie and his team could be contenders, though they've struggled on road courses. Who knows at this point? But good to see that Jimmie Johnson will get the chance and opportunity to race at the event in San Diego. He'll get the opportunity to race at Naval Bus Coronado in 2026, and we'll also probably see him compete against the likes of Connor Zilch. Will be full-time. His number still needs to be unveiled at this point, maybe for the win, of course. And then, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be the favorite for the win, but we'll see how it goes for Jimmie Johnson next year at Naval Base Coronado in San Diego. So, that's going to today's special breaking news report on Jimmie Johnson entering the NASCAR Cup race at San Diego. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. We'll description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about Jimmie Johnson entering the NASCAR Cup race at San Diego? Do you think will be a factor in the event or not? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to be ranking every single full-time NASCAR Cup Series driver from 36 to first. And if any other major news breaks, tomorrow we'll discuss it live on the channel. Then on Friday, we should have a NASCAR news video dropping on the channel as news has continued to break over the last couple of days. We've got lawsuit updates to talk about again. We've got other stuff to talk about around some silly season news that might be breaking in the next few days. And then, of course, there might be something big dropping on Friday as well from what I've heard. Viking Motorsports might be teasing something around that at this point. Then on Saturday, we're going to be ranking all the races from 2025, going from the worst to the best event. And then, of course, on Sunday, we should have the first 2026 video dropping where we talk about the top 20 drivers to watch out for in 2026. We got content coming on people like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Boas, Ross Chastain, Charlotte Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Ryan Preece, Brad Keselowski, other people like Tyler Reddick, Will Brown, Brock Feeney, Cam Waters, Brendan Butterbean Queen, Cletus Safar, Dodge Ram, Tony Breidinger, all the good stuff. Junior Motorsports, Daniel Swartz, all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and coming weeks as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.